and welcome to Core Values, the All Things Broken Arrow Public Schools podcast. I'm your host, Greg Spencer, and alongside with me, as always, is Superintendent Chuck Perry. Chuck, how you doing today?
Doing great. Glad to be here.
We got two very special guests here today. Right across from me, we have the new Freshman Academy principal, Malinda Silva. How you doing, Malinda?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
And over here across from me, we have Crystal Barber, the executive principal of Broken Arrow High School. How are you doing, Crystal?
I'm living the dream. Thank you for having me today.
All right, so we are going to talk about something it's a new policy for the district that's getting ready to be implemented starting in the second semester, and we were here to answer any questions that people might have about it, and that policy is called Disconnect to Reconnect, or we might also phrase it as a campaign, I guess, as Tara would like us to say. But Chuck, I'm going to kind of go to you first, and if you either want to jump on what this policy is about or turn it over to our guest in terms of, they may be willing to give us a better explanation. What do we want to talk about? How do we want to kick this off?
I think more than anything else is this isn't something that has just been discussed the last 2 weeks. It has been something ongoing since the cell phone has entered the classroom years ago. And I remember being an assistant principal and dealing with that back in 04, 05 when it started becoming more prominent and really not having a great answer at that time, how to handle them. And back then they were mainly just used for calling and texting. And now we've got so many more apps and opportunities for students, some of them positive, some of them not so good to be used in the classroom. So this is something we've heard a lot from our teaching staff, being able to have a classroom where all students are engaged, and that there's nothing happening in the classroom that's hindering their academic growth. And along with that, knowing that there's generation students coming up that interpersonal relationships need to be focused on, because that's such an important part as an adult and being successful in a career. And we've got to be able to make sure we're saying that we're providing opportunities for that. Mm-hmm. And so I'll let Miss Barber or Miss Silva want to jump in here, and you all probably have heard more directly from teachers than even I have, and kind of what spurred this.
Yeah. So love what you said, and I would just add to it that it's really a way for students to reconnect in the classroom. Mm-hmm. So reconnect to focus on learning, reconnect with their classmates. We have all of the research behind just the basic human need is a sense of belonging. So what we believe is that keeping that cell phone put away during class time fosters that sense of belonging. It fosters that sense of connecting in the classroom. So disconnecting from your electronic devices, so not just cell phones, but also the earbuds, the watches, the other devices, so you can connect with students, connect with the learning.
So that's the theme of the campaign, Disconnect to Reconnect.
Right.
It's good.
I would just echo what Ms. Barber said. I mean, we are seeing more and more kids who, unfortunately, they're starting to become almost addicted to their cell phones, and so they really aren't engaged in the learning process. And, teachers want these kids to be successful as they progress through their careers and whatever level they're in and beyond Broken Arrow schools. And so we really want to help them encourage our students to be a learner that's all in.
Mm-hmm.
Like it.
So not too long ago, we sent out a survey to our families. Talk a little bit about the specific feedback from teachers, parents, and students that we utilize to come to this decision.
Parents want the best for their students and their child in the classroom. There are some times that, there's some concern in a crisis that a parent not being able to directly get a hold of their child. In today's society, we can't be naive to that we've got to provide some avenues to that. So the pushback from it has been minimal, but what's been brought up has been, what if I need to get a hold of my child? And we've got to discern between that and what is a healthy way to communicate that doesn't disrupt the classroom. If the message is, I need to pick you up at 3:10 instead of 3:30 today, working through all that. So
yeah.
Do you all want to talk more about that, or what you're seeing of ways that parents have given you some feedback?
Yeah. I don't think the pushback has really even been there at all, and I'm very thankful for that. I think overwhelmingly the survey suggested that we do need to have some restrictions in place, and exactly what those are, we can get into that in a little bit. So overwhelmingly supportive feedback from the survey. Do you want to add anything to that?
I would say been very similar, and we hear parents' concerns, and we've got some things put in place to make sure that parents can get a hold of their students. I mean, just like when I was in school, a parent is more than welcome to always contact the office. We can get a note to their student, but also if we do know emergencies come up at times, and it's all about teaching students communication skills. And so with that, they can approach their teacher and just say, hey, I really need to go to the office to make a phone call. I need to check in. And if we know it's an emergency, we want to make sure that kids are safe and that they're taken care of.
Something else we heard from parents was the bullying aspect within social media. Mm-hmm. Are you all seeing that? And from what you've researched, do you think that can help out in that area?
I would say yes. And, in my role the last few years as an assistant principal, I will say a large part of my day deals with social media and on online presence that we're seeing between students. And, we're very hopeful and hoping that this change will guide students into being more engaged and just having conversations. And like you said, Mr. Perry, working through those interpersonal skills. And really, we don't ever want students to feel like they're alone in all of that. And so we always encourage students to come report things to us, but also allow us as the adults in the building to kind of help facilitate any of those issues that are arising between them and another student, so that they can learn how to effectively work through any conflict.
Do you think this cell phone policy is the end-all, be-all, or do we need help from parents of monitoring cell phone use in the evening? And because I would assume all what bullying that's taking place is not just happening during the school day; it's happening evening.
Correct.
Yeah, there's a book I read recently, and I haven't finished it, but The Anxious Generation, and just about how important it is to really monitor those electronic devices outside of the school day. So absolutely, parents, it's not the end-all, be-all. Yeah. Parents need to be engaged with what their students are engaged with on their devices, and also just modeling things like at the dinner table. Let's put our phones away and let's just have conversations as a family and things like that.
Most of our parents, right, are of the age where they kind of are from the dawn of using cell phones. Me being, class of 1998, right? We had a family cell phone, I think, until I was a freshman in college. So, I think, they're at that age where they're just old enough to remember that we didn't always have to worry about, knowing where our kids were at all times.
I have two daughters that are 24 and 28, and I was in that generation of parenting where cell phones were becoming more prevalent. And when you give your child one, and really, I feel that our generation of parents maybe didn't know all the hidden dangers to the cell phones that we're aware of now. And it was saying this next generation of parents coming up, since they lived through that, they know the dangers better than maybe, I would have known. And so that they're going to be a little bit more, I hate to use the word strict, but monitoring it better, so that you doesn't drag students down those dark holes that we know are out there.
Well, and I think it's a big decision for a lot of parents of when to let the kids have cell phones. I tell this story a lot. I think it was 2 years ago, I was in a classroom doing a video on a counselor in 5th grade over at Highland Park. And she was talking about the dangers of the internet and cell phones and things like that. And she asked a question of a classroom of 5th graders, of maybe 25 plus kids, how many of them had cell phones? And I think all but 3 kids raised their hand. Wow. And that just was like, my kids are in 5th grade right now. They don't have cell phones. It's a conversation that we're going to maybe have next year. They've got iPads and we monitor those, but it's definitely something that's changing, where kids are getting cell phones at a younger age.
There's no doubt. And we work with the Demand Project that deals with human trafficking in Oklahoma, and they have a public service commercial that they showed us, and it's of a middle-aged gentleman knocking on the front door of a house and going upstairs and the mom welcomes the gentleman in, invites him upstairs to her daughter's bedroom, and shuts the door and leaves them two in there. And what it was trying to say is that's what we're doing when we give unrestricted access to the cell phones because of the potential grooming and things like that, the predators out there. So I think we've got to be aware of all of that and do our part in the schools to prevent that as much as possible.
In terms of this policy, talk to us a little bit about what exactly qualifies as a personal electronic device, because this is not just specifically, calling it a cell phone ban, right? Talk to us a little bit about that. I'm wearing an Apple Watch right now. Is that something that can a kid have a phone in a backpack or have it put away but still wear an Apple Watch or things like that?
We've spoken recently, and of course the phone, we just need it put away, right? Yeah. We want kids to be engaged. And so having the phone that's not accessible to them in their backpack away, having a smartwatch, we want students communicating on it, right? So we're looking at it more as a communication device. We know they're going to wear it to have the time, and that's okay. We just don't want them utilizing it in class for other reasons than looking at the time. Trying to take out AirPods or earbuds or headphones, those types of things will also be included, because if I've got my headphones on in class, I'm not engaged in what's happening around me because I'm listening to music or it's drowning out the noise. And then it's also prohibiting kids from connecting with their peers as well. So,
in addition, our kids were a one-to-one district and they're going to use Chromebooks. Just to clarify, this does not implement, this is not part of that policy, right? It's not something that would, prohibit them from using a Chromebook.
No,
just
Chromebooks
to clarify
are still,
that.
Are part of our one-to-one initiative, and they engage in those with Canvas and things like that. But iPads would not be a part of this.
So if a kid had a personal iPad and they were, that would be. Can we talk a little bit about how the district hopes this policy will help support, mental health and reduce distractions in the classroom?
Absolutely. I think it really goes back to like the soft skill of me looking you in the eye when we're engaging. We're talking about using those cooperative learning structures in the class more and more as we talk about engagement. So I can't have my phone out or be, tracking something on my Apple Watch while I'm trying to do a Kagan structure with you. So again, it's about that sense of belonging. It's about relating to each other. It's about engaging in the classroom culture and building that. And so all of those things, Malinda, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's exactly where we're going, is we want kids to feel that sense of belonging no matter what classroom they're in, right? And so going back to the soft skills again, is that's what people need. We need that. We have to have that human interaction to continue to feel good and build connection. And we just really want them to focus on that relationship piece, I think is huge.
Yep.
This isn't specifically something that we're only just aiming at the kids, right? We want the teachers to use their best judgment in this, because ultimately, and you guys are in the classrooms and you see these things, we want our teachers to have engaging classrooms, right? Talk a little bit about kind of how we think this is going to help the teachers as well in terms of classroom management and stuff like that.
There's been classrooms I've been in before where, man, it's a real struggle for some of those kids to step away from that phone or follow what the teacher is asking them to do. So this just eliminates that piece of helping the teacher keep that student engaged from the beginning. It's going to take time. I mean, this again goes back to, it's not the end all be all, but it is an opportunity for us to remove a distraction and make the kids focus on not only each other, but the instruction that's happening in the classroom.
Are there any specific challenges that we're looking to address with this, Crystal?
We already have a lot of teachers that implement this very, very well in the classroom.
And that's kind of what I was getting at earlier.
They have a process of how they, enforce that, and it can't look the same in every room just by nature of the rooms being different and things like that. And I will tell you, when I talk to teachers that have implemented this, they have no issues right now because it's just a part of their routine.
Right.
Kids know what to expect when they go in those rooms. So I think just for, us looking at the whole school, it not just being kind of in pockets where it's excellent, us looking at the whole school and then what, the process looks like when we have to address a student who does have a cell phone issue. And again, we're always going to address it under the umbrella of we're disconnecting to reconnect, and we're not trying to be punitive on any of this. But as you guys know, we have to have, if we have an expectation, we've got to have a plan to implement that and honor that expectation.
Can you talk about what some consequences may be with steps through that?
Absolutely. So, of course, we've got the Disconnect to Reconnect campaign that started today. And so we'll be getting out messaging, through various channels like this one, through parent newsletters, through our announcements in the morning, through GMBA, through lots of different channels like that. When we come back in January, so that's, I think the kids come back, the Tuesday or Wednesday?
Tuesday, the 7th.
That week will be, again, reminding, making sure teachers are reminding in the classroom. When we come back that Monday, the 13th, we are kind of all in there. And so what will happen there after we've, again, put out those reminders and warnings, we will, at the high school, the first week, it's going to be myself, Ms. Smith, and Mr. Brannon will be kind of on duty. So if a teacher does have an issue, we'll go to the classroom and we'll have a conversation with that student, and we will confiscate the phone for the day, but they're welcome to come and get that after school, and we'll have a whole plan on, we're going to let them really manage it. They'll come and turn it in and probably sign a form, and they'll put it, and they can come after school and get that. And then from there, it goes to, it's kind of progressive. It goes from there. But again, we've talked to other districts about this in and out of the state, and really, after a couple weeks, it's really a non-issue. When you can be really consistent in the beginning, then it's going to create success in the future.
Talk about some of the designated times and places that students will be allowed to still use their devices.
So ours may look a little bit different just because of the two different sites.
Yeah.
At BAFA, of course, before and after school, students will be allowed to utilize their cell phone, but really it's bell to bell for instructional time. We don't want them out in the classrooms. We want them not in the hallways as well. So during passing periods, it will need to be put away. We are going to allow them to have them at lunch, just because it's a big change for students right now, and with 700 kids at each lunch, to be quite honest, it'd be a little difficult to manage this first year, but we're hoping next year that change will look a little bit different, as middle schools have already implemented this. So it should be a little bit easier for us. But at the high school, I know they're going to do things a little bit differently than BAFA will.
Just slightly. I would say our non-negotiable is classroom time, instructional time. Although I would love to not see them during passing, we can't enforce that on our campus, and our kids are a little older. We acknowledge that too. So not during class time, but allowed during passing, before school, after school, and lunch.
Just kind of going down the line, making sure we touch on all these things. Talk a little bit about how we're going to make some of the current adjustments we might make to the policies as they've been so far.
Yeah, so we had implemented digital hall passes last year. And so what's been happening currently is students will scan a QR code with their phones to exit the classroom and put their destination. So that will be removed, and we will go back to just a traditional paper pass. So students will not see the option to scan a QR code to exit the classroom any longer.
Gotcha. And anything like that for you guys that you're having to deal with?
We use the exact same system, which is a beautiful thing. The Freshman Academy, the high school, being aligned in a lot of ways, but we use the same program for tardy passes. But the digital pass will go away, and we'll go back to a paper pass.
Do you guys see any changes? Is this kind of I know we're going to be starting out on it, and obviously, we want to grow and improve things. Talk about, what do we see as far as, getting feedback from students or teachers that we can maybe change down the road?
I think from everything we've seen with the national trend, though, this is the way things are headed. I think California and Florida may already have state bans of the cell phones within the schools. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma as a state came out with something that blankets this. So we're trying to be a little bit proactive here. And again, it's not punitive. I don't want students to think we're doing it to make their life miserable. We could talk about students being the best version of themselves and pushing them further than they can even believe about their really potential in life. And I think if the cell phone's a distraction, we're cheating our students by not putting those away and focus on what's important and getting them off the right foot. Always loved, the word commencement. We think of that as the end. That's the start of their careers and going on. I think this will better prepare them in the future too.
I anticipate another positive, and this is based on some data we've gotten from other districts, but a decrease in some discipline, specifically fighting and, the online cyberbullying and things like that. I anticipate a reduction in that because they just won't have the time or access to be on their devices during instructional time.
I agree.
Mr. Perry, I know one of the things that you're involved with is the Student Advisory Committee. Talk a little bit, I'm sure that you had some discussions with kids about this before we've implemented it.
We did, and I was really curious to see, how they would kind of react to having some tighter regulation parameters on how they use the cell phone. And I asked them to get into 3 groups. One, that they were really feeling like we're good now. The cell phone policy we currently have is good. There's no need to add anything. There was a group in the middle that were really, there needs to be some tighter regulations depending on the situation. We do need to look at it as a school district and really make a choice whether are there times that it's a distraction to learning, and even maybe it's not even them, but they know their friends are distracted by it. And then the third group obviously was ones that did not think cell phones need to be in school whatsoever. And by
Is that
far
the smallest of the 3 groups?
that was the smallest.
I think there was one person and then another student joined just
Yes.
out of support, you know.
But overall, the largest group is that middle group. And students, they're smart. They're not naive to the distraction and challenge it brings into the classroom. And ultimately, they want what's best for themselves, too. And if a teacher has to waste time trying to get students to put away cell phones all the time, that's not a good use of instructional time. So I think teachers are going to be, morale's going to be better. They're not going to have to fight that. I think that's creates a classroom environment where the teacher's going to have to keep our students engaged now. That and with what we're training with our cooperative learning structures, I think that's a perfect fit and timing for all this to happen.
Good stuff. Lastly, final words from you guys in terms of any words of wisdom that you'd like to give any students or parents for prepping for this and how it may slightly alter their lives for a few hours a day.
You want to take that?
I can.
And I'll add too.
I've had lots of conversations with students over the last couple of weeks, like just kind of getting their feedback on what's to come. And quite honestly, many of them said, "Oh, that makes sense," right? Like we do need to take an investment in our own education and remove the distraction. And so I think just being all in, that's what we want from students. And you only get out what you put into it. And so being invested in disconnecting to reconnect is where we're headed. And we can't wait to see kids really reach their full potential by removing the distractions from the classrooms, because they really do have the ability to make a difference. And this is just one step that we can get them there.
Crystal, any final words from you?
I agree. And just, I think be mindful of when you can communicate with your child on that device. So for the high school, we're saying passing periods and lunch and before and after school. For the freshman academy, we're saying during lunch, before and after school.
Correct.
Okay, so there's still, of course, access there. And then, of course, in emergencies, they have access to those. So we want to, again, remind of that important fact.
And if it's emergency, they can always call the front office and we will get a message down immediately. Yes. And, that's why we did school for many.
We all survived
decades.
our high school years.
And we can still do that, and we're equipped to do that. So
I agree. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'd like to thank Malinda Silva and Crystal Barber for joining us here on this episode of Core Values. Be sure and subscribe to the ArrowVision Podcast Network wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for watching us on YouTube and listening to us wherever you found us, and we'll see you next time.